The intended learning outcomes. After studying Module 7, we are expected to, number 1, discuss the contributions of the greatest writers in their written works. Number 2, identify the written works of the writers during the rebirth of freedom in the Philippine literature. And number 3, explain the meaning of the rebirth of freedom. The rebirth of freedom on 1946 to 1970.
Historical background. After the colonization of Spain, America, and Japan in 1946, the Philippines regained its freedom. In February 1945, U.S. troops reached Manila, which was devastated. Fighting would continue until July. World War II ended with Japanese surrender to the Allies on September 2. Manila was the second most destroyed city of World War II after Warsaw, Poland. With the destruction of Manila's urban infrastructure, universities, hospitals, newspaper printing plants, government offices, factories, and port facilities, the Philippines was left without its most modern sector. In 1944, Osmeña succeeded Quezon, who died in the United States as the president of the government in exile. Osmeña returned to Manila in 1945, and plans went forward to inaugurate the independent Republic of the Philippines. Manuel Rojas challenged the elderly Osmeña for the presidency and split from the Nationalist Party to form the Liberal Party. Rojas won the election of April 1946 and became the first president of the new republic with Elpidio Quirino as a vice president. The Republic of the Philippines was formally proclaimed on July 4, 1946.
Literature during this time. In this period, the early post-liberation period was marked by the kind and struggle of mind and spirit posed by the sudden oppressions from the enemy and the desire to see prince. By this, Filipino learned to express themselves more confidently. There was an increase in number of newspapers like Free Press and Morning Sun by Sergio Osmeña Sr., Daily Mirror by Joaquin Roses, Evening News of Roman Lopez's, Bulletin of Menzi. This newspaper only proved that we Filipinos were a reader in English rather than any other vernacular native language, like Tagalog, Ilocano, and any other vernacular languages. Writers and their works. Leon Maria Ignacio Agapito Guerrero y Francisco, or better known as Leon Guerrero III, was a Filipino diplomat and a novelist. He was one of the foremost Filipino nationalists of his era. As a crucial step towards a full narrative of Guerrero's life story, this article relies on private correspondences and public papers to retell the evolution of Leon Guerrero III as a biographer of Rizal. Leon Guerrero III is a partner in the law practice of Senator Claro M. Recto. He became Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs during the Magsaysay administration. Guerrero, a noted newspaperman before becoming an eminent diplomat, wrote the prize-winning The First Filipino on 1963, which represent understanding of Rizal human enough to be the national hero. These are the following works or famous works of Leon Guerrero III. Number 1. Twilight in Tokyo, published on 1946. Number 2. Passion and Death in the Use of, or USAFFE, published on 1947. Number 3. Report from Europe, published on 1951. And number 4. Today Began Yesterday, published on 1975. And the last one is Alternatives for Asians, published on 1957.
Salvador Ponce Lopez, in short S.P. Lopez. These are the famous books of him: The For Freedom, Democracy, Literature and Society, The Judgment of History, and the Literature Under the Commonwealth. Reading through S.P. Lopez's works, I must say how dedicated and passionate he was as a Filipino writer, journalist, diplomat, educator, and statesman. Based on his credentials, undeniably, he has wholeheartedly showcased his patrimony to his country. Moreover, his works reflected the real situation of the Filipinos back then. He likewise revealed what really was going on during the wrongdoings of American supremacy. His works have massively influenced every reader to raise their voices and unleash their nationalism. Hernando J. Abaya. These are the famous books of him: Betrayer of the Philippines, Looking Back in Anger, The Making of Subversive, a Memoir, and The Untold Philippine Story. Betrayal of the Philippines is all about vindictive expose of Americans' betrayal of the loyalist Filipinos during Japanese occupation. In his latest book traces the tortuous path of Philippine politics from the World War II down to Marcos years. He demonstrates the Philippine government and ultimately eliminate those who had in fact resisted the Japanese invaders in the post-war years. The liberal and nationalist-minded were hounded and tired with the communist paintbrush with the help of American advisors and Secret Service agents. Abaya committed itself to being a watchdog for political independence, democracy, human rights and dignity, and equitable economy.
Nestor Vicente Madali Gonzalez, or best known as NBM Gonzalez. He was a Filipino novelist, short story writer, essayist, and poet. Conferred as the National Artist of the Philippines for Literature in 1997, he revived the preserving Filipinos' cultural root through short story and other writing which were written into several languages. Gonzalez published first essay in the Philippines graphic and his poem was published in 1934. Now, these are the following famous work of NBM Gonzalez. Number 1. 7 Hill Away. Number 2. The Bread of Salt. Number 3. The Bamboo Dancers. And number 4. A Season of Grace.
Poetry in English during this period. For 21 years, many books were published, both in English and Filipino. Among the writers were Fred Ruiz Castro, Dominador Ilillo, and C. Virigor. Fred Ruiz Castro was considered one of the advocates for the integration of the Philippine Bar. He is also behind the creation of the Supreme Court Reports Annotated. He was dubbed as a father of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, the official association of lawyers that regulates their practices and support the judicial system. He helped improve the justice system to preserve the integrity and justice of all the people. He was known for his eloquence in debate and poetry and was editor-in-chief in Philippine Collegiate. Next is Dominador Ilillo. Dominador Ilillo was considered a pioneer of Philippine literature in English. Aside from his achievements in the field of engineering and academics, Dominador Ilillo was considered a well-recognized poet and author, which were greatly contributes to the Philippine literature. C. Virigor. He is the commanding officer of the 3rd Battalion, 121st Infantry, who covered himself with glory in that heroic encounter. He was the author of the Chorus for America, 6 Philippine poem. We will now move to the notable collection works of the period. It is include of the following. Manuel Viray was a poet, an educator, short story writer, and an essayist. He taught creative writing and literary criticism in universities in Manila, Philippines. His collection of poems are Heart of the Island, an analogy of Philippine poetry in English, Show from Kashmir, published in 1990 in English and held by 18 WordCat member libraries worldwide. Next, Wounded Stag is a collection of poems, has 54 poems on it. It has 70 pages, published at New Day Publishing in 1992, and introduction by Manuel A. Viray. Next is the Epistolary Criticism. It is published at Giraffe Book in 1998 and has 98 pages on it. So we will now move forward to Maximo de Ramos. Maximo de Ramos led a threefold life as a teacher, editor, and writer for over 45 years. He was descended from the Dumlao and Ramos folk farming of Pasay, Ilocos Norte. His first published work would subsequently be about folk that lives in San Narciso, Zambales. Ramos received his Philippine degree from the University of the Philippines for his seminal work, The Creatures of Philippine Lower Mythology. His work, collectively titled Realms of Myths and Reality, and consists of the following. Tales of Long Ago in the Philippines, published in 1953. Philippine Myths and Tales for Young Reader, published in 1968. The Creatures of Midnight, published in 1967. Legends of Lower God, the Aswang Complex in Philippine Folklore, and Philippine Demonological Legends and Their Cultural Bearings. So Ramos' hope was that after people got to know these creatures of lower Philippine mythology better, people would never fear them again. He furtherly hoped that the knowledge of these creatures would be helped to enrich the Philippine life and culture. So now we will move to Florentino B. Valeros. Florentino B. Valeros was a professor of English. He served as head of the Department of English American Philippine Literature. His work and ramos include the Philippine Cross-Section that is published in 1950. It is a collection of prose and poetry, or it is an anthology of Filipino short stories in English.
Nicomedes Nick Joaquin was born on May 4, 1917 in Paco, Manila, Philippines. He was a Filipino novelist, poet, playwright, essayist, and biographer whose works present the diverse heritage of Filipino people. Nick Joaquin was conferred the rank and title of National Artist of the Philippines for literature. He has been considered one of the most important Filipino writers along with Jose Rizal and Claro M. Recto. Unlike Rizal and Recto, whose works were written in Spanish, Joaquin's major works were written in English despite being a native Spanish speaker. Here are some of Nick Joaquin's work. The Woman Who Had Two Navels is a 1961 novel. It is considered classic in Philippine literature. It was the recipient of the first Harry Stonehill Award. It tells the story of an elite Filipina who is hallucinating and is preoccupied with the notion that she has two navels or belly buttons in order to be treated as an extraordinary person. A Question of Heroes. Through his critical essays on 10 key figures in Philippine history, Nick Joaquin provides a fresh point of view on Philippine heroes and their role in the Philippine revolutionary tradition. May Day Eve is a short story written by Nick Joaquin after the World War II. It became one of Joaquin's signature stories that became a classic in Philippine literature in English because of its lasting worth or with a timeless quality. T.D. Agkawili. He is a Filipino director and an author of collected poems and short stories, and he is known for his drama films. Some of his works are The Philippine Temptation, Fabulist and Chroniclers, Reading in the Philippine Literature, and Philippine Writing. Philippine Writing is the latest and perhaps the best anthology of English language, short stories, and poetry written by Filipinos.
Okay guys, today we're going to discuss or to know who is Amador Daguio. Amador T. Daguio was a Filipino writer and poet during pre-war Philippines. He published two books in his lifetime and 3 more posthumously. He was the Republic Cultural Heritage Award for his works. During the Japanese occupation, he joined the resistance and wrote poems in secret, later collected as the Bataan Harvest. He was the poet, novelist, and teacher during the Free War. He had published 2 volumes of poetry, which is The Bataan Harvest and The Lame Lar. He served as a chief editor for the Philippines House of Representatives before he died in 1966. These are the following works of Amador Daguio. Number 1 is The Wedding Dance, 2 The Flaming Lar, 3 is Man of Earth, 4 is Hutud Hi Aliguyon, an Ifugao Harvest Song. The Wedding Dance by Amador Daguio is a powerhouse of raw emotion for such as a short story, as the reader is drawn into the story of love and cultural reality. It is jars with a contemporary view of the world, get the most out of the story, explore the deep symbols and themes with the storyboards. Who is the publisher of The Wedding Dance? The Wedding Dance was first published in 1953 by Stanford University and in annual publication of works by participants in their literary programs. Number 2 is The Flaming Lar. The Flaming Lar is a poem written by Father when he first started written poems. Though this was written when he was still student, it was published so many years later, following the advice he got from his mentor, the Australian professor at UP, Tom English Moore. Jose Garcia Villa. Jose Garcia Villa in 1908 and 1997 was a Filipino poet, writer, and critic. He used the pen name Dove Leon, which was the combination of words dove, eagle, and lion, and was what he believed was his true persona. His notable works include The Anchored Angel, The Emperor's New Sonnet, and Footnote to Youth. Villa was the recipient of numerous honors and awards, including the Guggenheim Fellowship and Philippines Heritage Awards, a Poetry and Award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, a Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship and Shelley Memorial Award. In 1973, he was named a National Artist of the Philippines, and he also served as a cultural advisor to the Philippines government. He died in New York City on February 7, 1997. These are the following famous works of poetry by Jose Garcia Villa. Number 1, Have Come I'm Here. Number 2, The Footnote to Youth. Number 3, The Emperor New Senate. Karima Polotan. Karima Polotan Tubera was a Filipino author born in Philippines, December 16 in 1925, died in August 19, 2011. She was a renowned and highly respected fictionist, essayist, and journalist, with her works having received among highest literary distinction of the Philippines. Some of her stories have been published under the pseudonym Patricia S. Torres. Writing during the martial law years. Between the years in 1966 and 1986, her husband served as the executive assistant and speechwriter of then-President Ferdinand Marcos. Her husband works drew her into the charmed circles of the Marcoses. It was during this time, in 1969, that Polotan Tubera penned the only officially approved biography of the First Lady Imelda Marcos. Imelda Romualdez Marcos is the biography of the First Lady of the Philippines. These are the following Karima novels: The Hand of Enemy, The True and the Plain, The Adventure, Forgotten Country, and Author's Choice.
The new Philippine literature during this time. Philippine literature in Tagalog was survived during this period. Most themes and writings deal with Japanese brutalities, of the poverty of life under the Japanese government, and the brave guerrillas fights. Newspaper and magazine publications were opened like the Bulaklak, Liwayway, Ilang Ilang, and Sinagtala. Tagalog poetry acquired not only rhyme but substance and meaning. Short stories had better characters and events based on facts and realities, and themes were more meaningful. Novels became common but were still read by the people for recreation. The people's love for listening to poetic jest increased more than before, and people started to flock to places to hear poetic debates.
Books were published during Rebirth of Freedom. Mga Piling Kata by Alejandro Abadilla, Ang Maikling Kwentong Tagalog by Teodoro Agoncillo. Ako ay isang tinig collection of poems and stories by Genoveva Edrosa Matute. Mga Piling Sanaysay by Alejandro Abadilla, Maikling Katha ng 20 pangunahing author by A.G. Abadilla and Ponciano E.P. Pineda. Painasang Tagalog collection of selected poems by Husing Sisiw and Balagtas collected by A.G. Abadilla. Sining at Pamamaraan ng Pag-aaral ng Panitikan by Rufino Alejandro. Manlilikha ng Mga Piling Tula by Rogelio G. Mangahas. Makata first cooperative efforts to publish the poems by 16 Filipino poets. Panunulat, Mga Piling Akdang Pilipino by Efren Abuig. In this book, Abuig proved that it is possible to have a national integration of ethnic culture in our country. Mga aklat ni Rizal, many books of Rizal published during this time. The last one is the law-ordered, the additional study of life of Rizal. Don Carlos Palanca received 2 awards. These are the Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature and Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature.
The Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature, popularly known as the Palanca Awards, are a set of literary awards for Philippine writers, usually referred to as Pulitzer Prize of the Philippines. It is the country's highest literary honor in terms of prestige. Winning works are entered in the competition either as previously published pieces or in manuscript form. Palanca Awards, organized by the Carlos Palanca Foundation, is one of the Philippine longest-running awards program.
In 1950, Carlos Palanca Sr. launched the Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature until now. The award still being given although the man who founded it passed away. This award was given to writers of short stories, plays, and poetry. The first prize is Kwento ni Mabuti by Genoveva Edrosa. The second prize is Mabangis na Kamay, Maamong Kamay by Pedro S. Dandan. Third prize, Planeta, Buwan at Mga Bituin by Elpidio P. Capulong. So, that is the end of the Module 7. This is reported by Ms. Oyag, Peralta, Manangan, Limhoco, Pañares, and Moreno. and to be followed by the Module 8 reporter. Miss Sadaba, Nabwab, Sandigan, Samson, and Lumapay.
Module 8, Period of Activism, Lesson 8. After studying this module, you are expected to A. Define what is martial law. B. Write a synopsis of the story titled The Ritual by Cerelio F. Bautista. C. Determine the relevance of the meaning of the story titled The Ritual to the Marcos administration during the period of activism. And D. Apply the moral of the story into day-to-day life as a constituent of this nation. What is activism? It is a policy or action of using vigorous campaigning to bring about political or social change. So activism is quite simply taking action to effect social change. This can occur in a myriad of ways and in a variety of forms. Often, it is concerned with how to change the world through social, political, economic, or environmental change. This can be led by individuals, but it is often done collectively through social movements.
Activism is connected with the history of Filipinos in the field of literature. This chapter will narrate the ills of society in the Filipinos who seek reforms.
The period of bloody placards. Activism is connected with the history of the Filipino youth. Because of the ills of the society, the youth moved to seek reforms. The seeds of activism resulted in the declaration of martial law in 1972 until 1981. So we all know martial law was declared by President Marcos, claiming that it was the last defense against the rising disorder caused by increasingly violent student demonstration or disactivists and the alleged threats of the communist insurgency by the new Communist Party of the Philippines or the ZPP. So during the martial law, we see the call for revolution and the actions made by the youth in response to go against the powerful forces in the Philippines. With this said, campus journals became the youth's instrument to express rebellious criticisms against the national government who prior to this period exercised abuse of power, authority, and position. The Literary Revolution. During this period, the youth became completely rebellious. This was proven not only in the bloody demonstrations and in the sidewalk expressions but also in literature. Campus newspapers showed rebellious emotions. Writers developed awareness for society. They held pens and wrote on placards in red paint the equivalent of the word makibaka or to dare. So the literature of the activists reached a point where they stated boldly what should be done to effect these changes. This period began in 1970 and lasted for 2 years. The reason is not only about domestic, national concerns but global economic issues as well. More importantly, this arose because of the youth's desire for genuine national reforms. Any establishment became the symbol of the ills that had been changed. The frustration of youth could be felt in churches and schools. Some of those who rallied to this revolutionary form of literature were Rolando Tino, Rogelio Mangajas, Efren Abueg, Rayo Alma, and Clemente Bautista.
Ferdinand Emmanuel Edralin Marcos Sr., or commonly known as our late President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. He was born on September 11, 1917 in Sarat, Ilocos Norte, Philippine Islands, and he died on September 28, 1989 at the age of 72 in Honolulu, Hawaii, USA. Political party, Kilusang Bagong Lipunan from 1978 to 1989. And he also has other political affiliations such as Liberal, 1946 to 1965, Nacionalista, 1965 to 1970, and last Independent, 1972 to 1978. President Marcos studied at the University of the Philippines, and his profession, lawyer, jurist, and politician. Marcos gained political success by claiming to have been the most decorated war hero in the Philippines. After World War II, he became a lawyer, then served the Philippine House of Representatives from 1949 to 1959, and the Philippine Senate from 1959 to 1965. He was elected as the President of the Philippines in 1965. He declared martial law in his second term on September 23, 1972. Martial law was ratified in 1973 through fraudulent referendum. After being elected for his third term in the 1981 Philippine presidential election, Marcos' popularity suffered greatly due to the economic collapse that began in early 1983. Later that year, this discontent, the resulting resurgence of the opposition in the 1984 Philippine parliamentary election, and the discovery of documents exposing his financial accounts and false war records led Marcos to call the snap election of 1986. Allegations of mass cheating, political turmoil, and human rights abuses led to the People Power Revolution of February 1986, which removed him from power.
Good afternoon, Pidge and everyone. My name is Mahmoud Sanson. Today I will go into report about writing during the period of activism. The irreverence for the poor reached its peak during this period of mass revolution. It was also during this period that bomba films that discredit our way as a Filipino started to come out. The period of the New Society started on September 21, 1972. The Carlos Blanca Award continued to give annual awards. Almost all teams in most writing deal with the development or progress of the country, like the Green Revolution, family planning, proper nutrition, environment, drug, addiction, and pollution. The New Society tried to stop pornography or those writing giving bad influence on the moral of the people. All schools' newspapers were temporarily stopped, and so with school organization. The military government established a new office called the Ministry of Public Affairs that supervised the newspaper, books, and other publications. The government took part in reviving old plays like the Cenaculo, the Zarzuela, and the Embayoka of the Muslim. The Cultural Center of the Philippines, the Folk Arts Theater, and even the old Metropolitan Theater were rebuilt in order to have place for this play. Singing both Filipino English songs received fresh incentives. Those sent abroad promote many Filipino songs, and weekly publications like Kislap and Liwayway helped a lot in development of the literature. This became outlet for our writers to publish many of their works.
Theater. Theater is a structure where theatrical works or plays are performed or other performances such as musical concerts may be produced. There are as many types of theaters as there are types of performance. Theaters may be built specifically for certain types of productions. They may serve for more general performance needs, or they may be adopted or converted for use as a theater.
The Philippine Educational Theater Association, or PETA, is founded on April 7, 1967. It is a theatrical association of artists and educators. It is the UNESCO International Theater Institute Center in the Philippines. It is a non-profit, non-stock, non-governmental, and a registered institution. It was awarded the Ramon Magsaysay Award in 2017.
Some theaters may have fixed acting area. In most theaters, this is known as a stage, while some theater, such as black box theaters, may not allowing the director and designers to construct an acting area suitable for the production. Next, we have Repertory Philippines. It is the only theater company that never ceases to teach and train young, deserving, and passionate actors.
Repertory Philippines is known for producing plays in English, which is the subject of criticism by Filipino nationalists, although the theater company had a policy of not hiring foreign actors for the lead roles in their plays. The Repertory Philippines was established in 1967 by Sinaida Amador and Baby Barredo. Its first production was a Tagalog language adaptation of Miss Julie by August Stringberg, which was directed by Rolando Tino.
Last, we have Teatro Pilipino. Teatro Pilipino was a resident drama company of the Cultural Center of the Philippines from 1976 to 1987. It was founded by Filipino playwright, translator, director, and educator Rolando S. Tino, who also served as its artistic director. The Teatro Pilipino, the company was dedicated to producing world classics in translation as well as notable Filipino plays, as it aimed to promote cultural development and support of the Filipino language through theater. Teatro Pilipino popularized of a number of classic masterpieces among Filipino audience by translating them into Filipino.
Palanca Awards, established in 1950. The Palanca Awards, or Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards, are literary awards of the Philippines. Furthermore, the Palanca Awards, or Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature, is the Philippines' most prestigious and most enduring literary awards and is dubbed as the Pulitzer Prize of the Philippines. Most, if not all, important or major Philippine authors have one or more palancas in their belts. For some, especially to a young fictionist or poet, winning a palanca is a sort of baptism of fire, denoting or announcing that one has arrived in the Philippine literary circles. Don Carlos Palanca Sr. was a man who, by the sheer dint of hard work, self-study, and integrity rose to become a successful businessman. The aims of the awards have been helped to develop Philippine literature by providing incentives for writers to craft their most outstanding literary works, and to the treasury of the Philippines, literary gems from Filipino writers, and to assist in its eventual dissemination to the people, particularly the students.
There are three short stories. First, The Ritual by Cirilo F. Bautista. In relation to time Ferdinand Marcos, we can portray that the people of Dayleg are Filipino citizens. The people were left to endure the effect of Dayleg mistakes when he left, and so did the Filipinos when Marcos' term ended. The Philippines drowned in debt because the loan that Marcos borrowed from the World Bank, aside from leaving or with financial problems, he also marked the minds of the citizens with debt and corruption, for those who had family member or friends died during his time. Second, Best in the Field by Rosil Mojares. And third, Children of the City by Amadis Maguerero. The story ended when the author realized how cruel the world is, where workers were made to sign statements certifying they received minimum wage, where millionaires politicians received Holy Communion every Sunday, where mother taught their sons and daughters the art of begging, where orphans and children from broken homes left on the pavement and under darkened bridge.
Poetry is a type of literature that evokes a concentrated imaginative awareness of experience or a specific emotional response through language chosen and arranged for its meaning, sound, and reason. It often employs rhyme and meter, a set of rules governing the number and arrangement of syllables in each line. In poetry, words are strung together to form sounds, images, and ideas that might be too complex or abstract to describe directly. So these are the three genres of poetry. First is lyric poetry. Uses song-like and emotional words to describe a moment, an object, a feeling, or a person. Types of poetry that could be classified as a lyric poetry. First, elegy, reflective poem to honor the dead. 2. Haiku, a 17-syllable poem that was natural imagery to express an emotion. Number 2. Narrative poetry, tells a story, also known as epic poetry. Narrative poetry is often set to music as ballads. Narrative poems are usually of human interest and include epics or long stories. Examples of poetry in this genre include allegory, a narrative poem that uses an extended metaphor to make a point. Number 1. Ballad, narrative poetry set to music. Last, dramatic poetry, also known as dramatic monologue, is meant to be spoken or acted. Similar to narrative poetry, dramatic poetry tells a story. Most likely to find dramatic poetry in the form of dramatic, even comedic monologues or soliloquies written in a rhyming verse. Many dramatic form appear as monologue, a speech given by one character to another or by one character to the audience, also known as dramatic verse when not in poetic form.
On the 21st of September 1972, the period of the new society arose. During this time, the military government established the Ministry of Public Affairs to supervise the newspaper, books, and other publications. Majority of the time in this period was about regaining composure for the Philippines from multiple obstacles we had faced in the recent years.
Hi, my name is Norhilin Mahmoud, one of the reporter from Group 3 BSCE 1A student. So now we will discuss about the period of the new society in Module 9. So this is the historical background of the period of the new society. The period of the new society started on September 21, 1972. It derived its name from the phrase Bagong Lipunan or New Society, which Marcos claimed he was establishing with the martial law regime, a new society in the sense that it would be rid of the old society's ills such as graft and corruption, indiscipline, lack of respect for authority. The military government established a new office called the Ministry of Public Affairs that supervised the newspapers, books, and other publication.
Good day everyone, my name is Rubia Carla Andrea Cedillo and I am here to tackle the Filipino poetry. Filipino poetry is considered to be the highest point of development for the Filipino folk literature, encompassing narratives that recounts the adventures of tribal heroes. The following are the slogans of the new society. First is the "Sa kauunlad ng bayan, disiplina ang kailangan." This line comes from the late President Ferdinand Marcos, who promoted the martial law in the Philippines. This slogan is essential to every individual where they can see more the importance of discipline for a country to make the life of the people orderly and peaceful. If you want to change, we must first be disciplined before being progressive. Second is that tayo'y kumain ng gulay upang humaba ang buhay. This slogan implies that we should eat vegetables to be energetic and avoid disease. Just like in our situation right now, where we are facing pandemic, we need to be vigilant to not get sick. This slogan reminds us to eat nutritious food to ward off diseases. Third is the magplano ng pamilya na ang buhay ay lumigaya. One of the problems in the Philippines is a lack of family planning, where many people are struggling because it leads to unemployment, overpopulation, not everyone is able to study, and we end up in poverty. Before we get into a family, everything should be planned if possible, from how many children they want to have, whether they are able to work, and ensure respect from their partners. If all this has been done or gone through, we can have a peaceful life and avoid financial trouble and strife. This slogan can be a way for the Filipino people to know about the proper functioning of the family. Fourth is the ang pagsunod sa magulang, tanda ng anak na magalang. In this generation, many of the young people have been consumed by the technology system, that sometimes we can no longer do household chores such as cleaning, washing, laundry, and so on. But despite of the situation, there are still people or young people who are constantly doing housework, which is called being polite. We must follow the command or advice of our parents as they just really need our presence and help. They are also struggling and they need us. When we obey their advices, it will make them proud. This slogan suggests that young people should be obedient and respectful to the parents and be respectful for other people. Fifth is that tayo'y magtanim upang mabuhay. It is part of life to experience suffering and pain, but the more we take the beauty of our life, the more positive we will be. Like this slogan, which implies that we need to plan to survive, just as it literally means that if you plant, we will get something. Lastly, is that tayo'y magbigayan at huwag magsiksikan. In our future, there are people who would rather be happy with themselves than give or help others. If we can cooperate or give, we can't have a peaceful or quiet life. If people are selfish, it seems like we can no longer be called a citizen, as we also have a responsibility to help others, especially our fellow countrymen. At this point, I'm going to tackle the themes of poems. First is patience. Patience is a characteristic required to a person or even in a work or poem. By using this theme, more people will have a lesson on why we need to have patience. Each one of us has the ability and freedom to use this theme as it provides lesson and can be offered to people who are facing problems that seem to have no hope of getting up because they have lost their patience. Second is a native culture. Indigenous people helps protect our environment, fight climate change, and build resilience to natural disasters. However, they can't always protect their rights, and using this theme will help them to fight and build their rights. Third is customs. Customs are an important way of controlling social behavior. The importance of social norms cannot be underestimated. They are so strong that no one can escape their range. They control social life, especially those who cannot read and write, to a large extent and are essential to the life of a society. This is important in making a poem that can be used as theme where it gives a lesson to people and make people more knowledgeable about this theme that will be used in the next activity. Lastly, is beauty of nature and surroundings. It strengthens our economy, our society, our very existence. Our forest, Rivers, oceans, and lands give us the food we eat, the air we breathe, and the water we use and take. We also rely on them for many other products and services that depend on our health, happiness, and prosperity. As a theme, it helps us to appreciate our nature and environment, not only because it helps our way of life, but it is our responsibility and obligation to love and care for it as God has given it to us. This is one of the best themes in making poems or other Filipino works. These are some of the composers during this period. First is Freddy Aguilar. He is a Filipino folk musician who composes eloquent songs that could capture one's mind and hearts because of its message. Second is Jose Marichan. He was the star of a series of television network specialists spotlighting his words and music. Tito, Vic, and Joey, the power trio composed of versatile singers, actors, comedians, and entertainers.
Play. Play is a literary form of writing poetry, which narrates a story with elements of conflicts, tensions, and actions through dialogues of characters. There are 6 elements of play. Number 1, plot. It refers to the order of the events that occur in the play. Number 2, characters. The characters form a crucial part of the story and are interwoven with the plot of the play. 3, dialogue. It refers to the conversation or interactions between the characters in the play. 4, setting. It refers to the time and place where a story is set. It's one of the important parts of the play. 5, conflicts. It refers to the challenge main characters need to solve to achieve their goals. 6, resolution. It is unfolding or the solution to a complex issue in a story. Types of plays. There are many types of plays such as number 1, tragedy. These types of plays end on a tragic note and most likely a character's death. 2, comedy. These types of plays are meant to amuse the audience and they end on a happy note. 3, domestic play. These types of plays are based on the normal life or family and friends. 4, tragicomedy. It is a fictional work comprises of both tragedy as well as comedy. 5, melodrama. This type has often exaggerated characters and episodes with songs and music for an emotive appeal to the audiences. There are one example of play from literature. Example number 1, Macbeth by William Shakespeare. Functions of the play. A play functions as a tool to give reveal to one's thoughts through performance in front of the live audience. Writers skillfully feature certain situations to make the audience laugh at funny incident as well as feel pity and fear for unfortunate circumstances or incidents.
Good day everyone, I am Vladimir Saitas and my report is about the radio and television. First of all, what is radio and television? Okay, so radio and television is a broadcasting distribution of audio or any video content to a dispersed audience via any electronic mass communications medium, but typically one using the electromagnetic spectrum, which is radio waves. Moreover, television and radio broadcasting involve the production, which is they provide news and entertainment to people throughout the country, including rural areas. Radio and television also provide educational programs that can be understood even by the illiterate people. Okay, so radio continue to be patronized during this period. The play series like SL Matar, Dahilan, Ito Ang Palad Ko, and Mr. Lonely were forms of recreation of those without television. Okay, so this play series that mentioned gives to people entertainment, especially to those people that have not television in their homes. Next, these are the popular television plays. First, Gulong ng Palad. Gulong ng Palad is a Philippine radio drama series which first aired by DZRH and soap opera hit from 1977 up to 1985. Next, Flor de Luna or Maria Flor de Luna. Maria Flor de Luna is Philippine primetime soap opera that aired on ABS-CBN and DZMM Teleradio in the Philippines and on the Filipino channel worldwide. The third one is Annalisa. Annalisa is a 2013 Philippine family drama television series based on the eponymous 1980 television series aired by GMA Radio Television Arts. Next is Superman. Superman is a superhero who appears in American comic books published by DC Comics. And lastly is the Tarzan. Tarzan is a fictional character raised in the African jungle by the Mangani great apes. He experienced civilization only to reject it and return to the wild as a heroic adventure. Okay, so this is my report. Thank you.
Filipino Films. A yearly pista ng pelikulang Pilipino o yearly Filipino Film Festival was held during this time. During the festival, which lasted usually for a month, only Filipino films were shown in all theaters in Metro Manila. Example is Maynila sa Kuko ng Liwanag by Edgardo Reyes, Min sa Isang Gamu-Gamu by Nora Honor, and Ganito Kami Noon, Paano Kayo Ngayon, led by Christopher De Leon and Gloria Diaz. Okay, Filipino Films. It is another way to express our love to our country, our people, and to our history. Some said that Philippines is one of the best in making films because some of films was made on a true story or true life events. The best example for it is the books that was written by Rizal, which is Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. Filipino films are like making an inspiration for people who watch it. Some Filipino films makers sees these films as their own life, because some of the films that they make as a part that they use their emotions, what was happening to their life or the life of a person who is suffering, humiliated, and bullied, then mix it to the films that they make, just to make it more realistic and connected to the audience. Many Filipino films was record of the past, the culture, the Filipino values, attitudes, mores, and way in life. To make it more understandable, Filipino films was made on a true story, and some was based on the experience of the author.
Okay, so earlier I reported the historical background of this module. So now I am tasked to report the last letter of form of literary piece that was dominantly used during the period of the New Society. So here comes letter E, which is the comics, magazines, and other publications. So number 1, we have Bulletin Today. It is a short official statement or broadcast summary of news, a regular newsletter or printed report issued by an organization or society. So number 2, Times Journal. The Times Journal newspaper is an English tabloid newspaper published by the Philippine Journalists Incorporated. Gus or Augusto Villanueva is current editor-in-chief, and Antonio Reginal were founders of the company. Number 3, Balita. News in English is a new information or a report about something that has happened recently. Information that is reported in a newspaper, magazine, television, news program, etc. Number 4, we have Filipino Express. News, information, and entertainment written with integrity for the Filipino. Next is we have all-time favorite magazine. Number 1, Liwayway since 1920. It is a leading Tagalog weekly magazine published in the Philippines since November 18, 1922. It contains Tagalog serialized novels, short stories, poetry, serialized comics, essays, news, features, entertainment, news and articles, and many others. So number 2, Kislap. We'll Read in the 50s was a magazine of general interest which are movie, song, radio, fiction, and features. So our last topic is comics enjoyed by the masses. Number 1 is Filipino. Okay. The first Filipino comic, as the Comics Cube has pointed out, was Jose Rizal's entitled Ang Matching at Ang Pagong, or in English, The Monkey and the Turtle. Okay, so that was the first Filipino comic published. Number 2, Extra. Okay. So number 3, Love Life. Okay. These are romance comics, romance fantasy, etc. Okay, number 4, we have Hiwaga. Hiwaga Comics was the third comic to come from Ace Publications, the premier producer of comics in the Philippines.
So, that is the end of the report of Group D. Thank you and have a good day.